Hey guys, it's your humble host, or a kid if you prefer. So I'm back with an update video in regards to the hearing for Safe Miles. The hearing was today at 2 o'clock. No, there wasn't a public link, so I have not heard anything in regards to what happened just yet. But I do have Breton here, so if you want to say hi there, Breton. So, what happened today? What was the verdict?
Okay, so we had a hearing on Zoom this afternoon, and as folks probably know, I have an attorney. He's shown himself to be a really good one. His name is Robert Wilby in Minnesota. And basically, well, so I should say that I have to be a little more careful going forward as to what I can talk about, mostly having to do with not putting anything online that would be considered private for my son, Miles, which I kind of expected, and I actually understand it. It was probably necessary up to this point, because just to kind of get the point across of what's really going on and show people what's happening. But at this point, that's been established, and so going forward, I'm just going to have to probably talk more in a general way about how the case is progressing.
Right, and that's perfectly fine. Usually details when it involves children are usually kept sealed. In this case, however, it was a necessity from the beginning because of what Centracare was doing by taking advantage of an autistic child and completely just putting a gender dysphoria blanket over everything. So, as I stated to you prior to the recording, if anything I ask is too confidential or you can't answer, just say, hey, no, too confidential, can't talk about that, and we'll move on.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, go ahead.
What happened today was Sarah was making a motion to get full legal custody so that she could, according to her motion, she was wanting to start hormone treatments, which I will not allow. And we made the case that would not be a good thing to do, and that there's a lot of room for expert witnesses and expert opinions, which were mentioned the last time I went to court on my own about a year and a half ago, that there might have to be some expert opinions introduced in this case. So the judge, that's another thing I should mention, is that the judge that was covering this last time has retired, and there's a new one. And he, in my opinion, seems to be much more of a level-headed kind of, a judge that will look at the facts of the case. So we were happy to see that, at least on my side. Yeah. And so the judge basically said that we're going to reconvene in a few weeks, and this was just kind of a pre-start, or how would you maybe call it? Maybe this is like round one, but basically more information has to be gathered. He also recommended that we communicate and try to work some of this stuff out outside of court, which of course has been my stance the whole time. Since I'm sure everyone knows we've been kind of locked out of the whole process. So I really feel like that statement was much more directed towards Sarah's side. So hopefully her attorney will convince her that she needs to start treating me as a co-parent that does have joint legal custody and take my wishes, into consideration in parenting.
Yeah, and I mean, we've covered it in a couple different videos, especially when we went over the medical document. They actually need to address Miles' autism and the conditions in between, and really look into like his obsession with the Disney princesses and which one, because I have a feeling, as I stated before, the Disney princesses he's attached to they really have a strong bond with their father. We talked about Ariel. Mulan is considered a Disney princess. You have Princess Tatiana. You have Ariel, you have Belle. So I bet you anything you dig into which Disney princesses he's attached to all have deep and meaningful relationships with their fathers. I will bet money on it, man. I bet you anything I am right about that.
I think that'd be a really worthwhile exploration into that if we could ever get to that point. And I know that I'll be looking into it, when eventually I get to spend more time with them. So, yeah.
That is another thing, because the joint custody was kept in place, and that is also, to clarify for my audience, that is joint custody 50-50, and that is also joint conservatorship. So both of those have been kept in place, yes?
Yes, so for now, Sarah's motion was not granted. She was looking for sole legal custody to move forward, and that was not granted. So as it stands, I guess you could say we kind of held our ground, and I do believe we kind of gained some in the sense of now the issues are starting to be brought out in more detail, and they need to be explored more. Like you said, Miles' autism and the underlying problems that he has, it really has nothing to do with gender dysphoria. And so I think that the judge also made, I think, a very reasonable, and this is kind of common sense, but I was glad to hear him say it. He made the point that every child is, kind of half of both parents.
Yes,
Miles is half me and half of Sarah. So when you're hostile towards one parent, you're basically being hostile towards at least half of that child. And I have always felt that way. I kind of came to that conclusion on my own.
Yes.
Very, very obvious. So hopefully Sarah heard that. And, so far, I was a little worried because even though I have joint legal custody, I've had it since the beginning, everyone involved has not honored it. Mm-hmm. Basically just pretended like Sarah already has sole legal custody. So I do think that what this is going to do is it's going to officially kind of put on notice everybody involved, like Centricare, the school system, hopefully, that that's actually not the case. And if anyone's going to violate, what's considered to be joint legal custody, there might be some repercussions in the future. There might be some liability. So I really feel like we made some serious progress in just kind of finally making it official, and everyone's starting to realize that I'm serious about this, and I'm properly represented by a very good attorney, and they can't just blatantly violate my parental rights anymore.
Right. Now, something I do want to ask, because I'm sure this came up as the opposing party's argument, is what was the judge's response rather to, because I know this was more than likely brought up, to you, quote unquote, disappearing for almost 3 years. I'm sure that was an argument made in court, yes?
Well, today that was not brought up.
Really?
There probably wasn't much of a chance. Yeah, it might be brought up in the future. And, of course, we're going to address that as it really wasn't that I left voluntarily, that it was more like I was pushed out. And, I do claim some of that. I wish I would have started this fight a lot earlier, but I just didn't realize how far this can go. I didn't even know there was such a thing as trans children until, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago or so. So I probably would have stepped in a lot sooner. But, yeah, that was not brought up today. And in the future, if it is, we will I've been kind of trying to say this from the start, that in a way our job is really easy, and that's just to tell the truth. And it's, like that old saying, it's a lot easier to tell the truth because you don't have to remember a lot of things. We're just here to tell the truth, and we're going to tell the truth.
Right. And to touch upon, because a lot of parents don't understand this, and I struggled with this myself growing up. I'm not going to get really into my family's personal business, but as a trauma or past trauma victim/survivor, I was a victim/survivor of child sexual abuse, and that's one thing that I struggled with a lot in regards to which parent was good, or quote unquote good versus quote unquote bad. There was, and there still is, a lot of anger towards my bio mom, and and I'm not shitting on my parents. I'm not doing it. I'm just giving context. One thing for me was I have the looks of two women in my family that are considered to be very mean and very nasty and called ugly quite a few times. And then for me to be called like pretty or whatnot was a little bit of an oxymoron. Just like, okay, you're saying two different things. I mean, it wasn't done out of hurt towards me, but I mean, I've been apologized to, but it does affect a child when you trash one parent, and then put the other one on a pedestal. I'm actually still kind of dealing with that now because my parents divorced. Again, not really going to get into that. Because like with this divorce, my a lot of my family members, which I don't talk to, demonize my dad. This is my second divorce that I've been through, like the second family that has split. So I've been through this twice now, to where my dad was the quote unquote demon, and so it's not good to do that to a child. It really isn't. And even like as an adult now, I still have issues because of just how much damage my bio mom did. So kind of looking back is like, well, I really don't want to reflect anything on my bio mom, but you know, something I will say, because I brought this up with someone else. I'm not trying to make this about me. Um, but something that I mentioned to someone else is that what people don't realize when it comes to like demonizing the parent may be quote unquote bad, but what you don't realize is they had good qualities that they might have thrown away that have been passed to the children. Hopefully, you get what I'm saying. Um, but yeah, it just
Yeah, yeah.
it just it's
Well,
okay.
I
Go ahead.
follow you, I'm sorry to hear, about having a hard childhood, and what I can say to that is I can relate to it. There is a whole other element, I don't know if it's within the scope of, the Save Miles or what we're talking about exactly, but I think it is, by extension, is that, a lot of multi-generational childhood trauma and family traumas, and I guess you could call just family problems, they do seem to get transferred from one generation to the next. And I think a lot of people do realize that. I can tell you that that's happened in my family, and I know it's happened in Sarah's family. And I, how it's worked out for me is I wish that I could have worked out some of these things before having a child. And I owe this to Miles. I mean, I can't let this happen to him. This is just like the modern version of just abandoning someone to the fates of, a cruel world. And in some ways, Miles is just getting hit the cruelest of this cruel world. So I'm not going to let this happen to him, but I know, where it comes from. It comes from, it's just intergenerational damage. And so I think that's what I heard you, talking about. And that's a really hard one to overcome. I've done a lot of work on it myself. I listened to a lot of people smarter than me that have given me a lot of ideas on how to try to cancel it out and not transfer it on, and it takes a lot of work.
No, and it does. The Christian term, or how Christianity defines it, is generational curses, and there's a lot of stuff in just my bloodline, if you will, on my bio mom's side. So having to sort through that, because I have two siblings who portrayed certain behaviors that their generations before them did, and then both of them kind of already passed on and kind of just left behind more stuff. So it's hard to look at that and go, can I do any better, or is it just better not to touch it?
Yeah, I listened to a guy, I probably shouldn't mention his name because he's a little bit controversial on YouTube or online, but, he's a very smart guy. And, he talks about how basically, every generation has this choice, which is, do you recognize, that not everyone gets, childhood trauma. I have had plenty of friends in my life that were raised very well, and I envy them, but yeah, people that have had, childhood trauma, they, at the end of the day, does the person recognize that it was wrong and then do what it takes to not transfer it on, which takes, self-awareness and kind of transcending it? or do they not recognize it and they just start to identify with their abuser, so to speak, which I think happens a lot. And so, I know in my family, I probably am like the first one that's like questioned it. It's just that it's unfortunate that it didn't happen quick enough to make some better choices about who I had a child with and things like that. But I'm probably getting off in the weeds a little bit here. I don't mean to, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can very much relate.
Yeah. So I just, as I said, demonizing one parent of the other, even if that parent's an abuser, like I have to, and this isn't really taught. Is you still have to teach that child, like, look, this is who your parent is now, but that's not who they were meant to be. Like, I was looking up, what the funny thing is, I was looking up my bio mom's name, like the meanings behind it. And one of her names means pure. I'm not going to give the language and things like that. And my last name, I forgot what language, it's white, also means pure. So I actually kind of find that just kind of ironic, considering the person who she became versus the person that she could have been with her name. But I'm starting to look at that like that. So, and that just, a lot of people don't talk about that. So what Sarah has been doing with Miles is like, oh, well, you're a girl. I'm pretty much going to remake you in my image because I don't like, your father and I don't want to see his image. And that does have to do with, a lot of parents do this, and it's mostly, and I'm not picking on moms, but it's a lot of women who go out of their way to do this. I mean, my own bio mom, she tried to turn me into what she was pretty much, and it had the opposite effect. She freaking hates my guts because of it. So when looking at what Sarah was doing with Miles or is trying to do, it's just like, no, I don't. Anytime you have a parent that goes after the child and tries to use the child as a weapon, it's freaking wrong, man. Oh, no, man.
Yeah, I can't understand it. What she's doing. In a lot of ways, it's surreal, and it's probably always going to be surreal because I just can't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of felt like through this whole thing that a couple of analogies. I feel like this chasm opened up in the world, in the past, 10 years, let's say. And I ended up on one side of the chasm, and Sarah ended up on the other. And as we were grappling for Miles, he got left on the other side of the chasm. And so what I feel like is that he's in a really dangerous place, because this is done a bigger picture. This is, playing itself out in our society with the left versus the right. And, this year is crazy with all the dynamics going on politically.
Yeah.
And so, my son's really kind of behind enemy lines. And not only that, he's there's a lot of very damaging, lasting things being threatened at him. And so, I guess I would just bring it around to, I feel like I owe this to him. I have no choice. I'm not going to leave him over there to have a nightmare life and a nightmare reality, and have his body mangled because it's just not him. I mean, it's one thing if he wants to be called Miley, and if he's 18 or 28 or onward and he wants to wear dresses or what have you, that's all stuff that I accept and I'll love him regardless. But I think anybody on this side of the chasm, just understands that there's just no such thing as trying to turn a boy into a girl and a girl into a boy. And I know it just comes back to the basics like that, but it's just, sometimes we lose track of the basics. It's like anytime they're proposing giving cross-sex hormones to a child or mutilating their body, I mean, there's just no way to justify that. So I'm in this and I'm sticking to it. And we just had a first round and we held our ground, and I believe we even gained a little because we're starting to bring attention to some of the bigger aspects of this case. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you continue to interview me and do little updates, and anyone that's willing to listen. And I just really appreciate that.
You're welcome. It just this stuff, when I was younger, I wanted to help children like me in order to prevent children from going through stuff like I did. And there are far worse stories than what happened to me by far. Never in my wildest dreams did I even think, or it just none of this stuff ever came to mind. I mean, this is severe psychological, mental, and a form of sexual abuse. It really is an exploitation. I just, I can't even like you. I can't even wrap my head around what's really going on. I mean, it's evil. I mean, I can get into the spiritual aspect. I can get into the political aspect. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces that are constantly shifting and trying to counteract the pushback. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, or was it the other night? And I was just going through. I'm like, look, I don't have a tolerance for none of this crap anymore. And if you really dig down, because I brought this up in a recent video of mine, there's a movement out of the UK, the detransitioners, mostly led by women, and they have all come out saying that they never dealt with my deeper issues. They just said it was gender dysphoria, threw me on puberty blockers, threw me across sex hormones. There's a YouTuber on here that I just, pardon me, I'm not threatening physical violence. Let me make that clear, because I know certain people when I come across this video that, metaphorically speaking, I just want to ground pound because Blair White. Let me explain why. So I came across a video the other day of Blair's. Blair is male to female. Hasn't even done the full transition, so to speak. And you want to know why that Blair has listed it is because it increased suicidal thoughts, depression, and things like that. So Blair refuses to do it. And I'm just kind of watching snippets of this video because Blair was interviewing another male to female transitioner, and both of them said they, at the age 3 to 4, said, oh, well, we felt like girls, gender dysphoria. The person that Blair was interviewing said that they socially transitioned at the age of 10. I sat there kind of thinking, like, I would love to see how your guys' households were growing up because something tells me either you guys were traumatized by something, brainwash. It just, you always, when you get to the root of it, it's either going to be trauma, whether that's medical, say like cancer treatments, or sexual, or some other of that nature, or there's a mental disability, or there's a mixture of both. I actually know someone, well, not know someone, but I was told about someone from a friend that they're now female to male, they want to transition, they feel like they're a guy, but they're also going through cancer treatments. They're a cancer survivor. So right away, it's just like, well, the chemo destroyed your feminine beauty. So in your mind, you now see yourself as a guy. I mean, there's more to it than that. I'm just like generalizing it maybe a bit too much. But I just, and I also do like the Save James stuff too, is this particular YouTuber, Blair White, did cover the situation. There's a little clip. I still have this clip because you can tell it was added on at the last minute, or there was like, it was a cut jump to where Blair literally said, hey, Ann, I want to bring you and James on for an interview, and I hope James lucks out as trans. Dude, I got so freaking pissed. And just like, what in your mind think that is ever okay? No, there's just, and I have no hatred for Blair White, but that was just something that came to mind because I literally just saw that interview video the other day, or snippets, and I'm going like, because Blair wants to show both the successful stories and the not successful stories, and like realistically speaking, there is no successful stories. There is brainwashing, there's illusion, there is, I'm not going to deal with my issues. I'll give you another example, and I'll say this one thing, and then you can go on, because I don't want to go off on another YouTuber. With Blair White, because I do poke in on their channel every now and then, Blair White was engaged to a guy, and this guy, their fiance, started to heavily drink. They called off the engagement due to his quote unquote alcoholism. And it's just like, and I'm not trying to like, hey, I told you so, or nothing like that, but it's my brain's thinking, why is he starting to heavily drink? I don't know what type of mental state he's got. It just there's a lot, but it's a perfect example of, well, you want to portray everything as positive, but what's showing what you talk about. No, it says the exact opposite. So sorry, I just went, yeah, this kind of has to do with it. So because there are people like Blair and among others who try to portray that in a good light. It's like, no, you're living a lie. You are living an outright lie. I don't care how pretty you think you look or how womanly you think you look or the opposite sex. You're living a lie. I don't. Oh man.
I a lot of people would say that Blair White is like the example someone would first come to their mind if they even know about this issue, that would say that, like a quote unquote successful person that successfully, is socially transitioned, and I suppose partially physically transitioned, if I understand correctly. But at the end of the day, I just can't go there. If it was only for the reason that who in their right mind would ever want to voluntarily sign up their entire life to being at the mercy and dependent on the medical system so heavily. Life's already hard, and I think there's a lot of evidence showing life's going to just get harder. Society's going to continue to break down, and things are going to get harder. And so this idea of just signing yourself up, it's one thing, I suppose, if you're an adult and you have some kind of level of consent, but it just goes into a whole other territory when you start talking about children that have no idea what they're doing, and then you start talking about autistic children, which is, the case of my son, and this idea that they're going to spend the rest of their lives just being heavily dependent on dangerous drugs that are making them sick, and surgeries after surgery that don't really work, and then not really ever passing, and so being socially ostracized. And they could pass a million laws, and the Supreme Court can even, rule in favor of not discriminating against these things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because it's so against just common reality, objective reality, that it just doesn't work. So I guess I just don't understand how anyone can ever try to frame it as being a healthy thing. I just think even in the best case scenarios, like let's say Blair White, who's a quasi, YouTube celebrity, and I guess kind of, if you squint just right, kind of looks like a woman, sort of. I still don't. I personally just could never call that a success. So I think I agree with you. I think what I heard you say is there's just really no such thing as a successful transition.
No, I just, and again, I'm not, sorry, I still creaking on my chair. I'm not trying to shit on Blair White, but the more that I poke in, because I think it was last year, Blair wanted to stop cross-sex hormones to try to have a kid. And I remember sitting there watching this, and this was before my blowout with Suit Yourself, is because me and Suit were talking about this. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Play mommy now? You're not a woman. You cannot give a mother's love, because first off, your heart is not formatted that way. Second of all, you don't even understand the concept of motherhood. A man cannot, just like a woman cannot understand the concept of fatherhood. The hearts are formatted way too different. People want to argue, well, there's this study on brains, white matter versus gray matter. No, it does not matter what brain you have. The brain also responds to the biology of the body. I'm not a medical professional, but still, it's just like, no, there's so much more to it than, oh, well, I was born with a man's brain in it. What? No, it's bullshit. I just remember looking at this, because the more I see Blair put stuff on their channel, the more issues that tend to come out. Blair trying to be a mom's like, well, you physically can't. What are you going to do? Impregnate a surrogate mother and have it's so convoluted.
There have been people out there that have done it. It's, talk about complicating your life.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the stories, and it's just like, what are you going to... you're not even thinking with any foresight what that's going to do to your child, because you're going to confuse your child, bring about so much complication in the family dynamic. I mean, it just, mm-mm. And I'll say this again. I really don't give a shit who I offend anymore with this. The nuclear family is the only family that will actually bring up a proper society. And the nuclear family, by the way, let me touch upon this because I know people complain about me saying it. The nuclear family has to be healthy too. Mother, father, healthy relationship with the children. That is a healthy nuclear family. There is no other family dynamic that sustains a proper and healthy society. None.
Yeah, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that the family is the building block of a society, and what we're seeing now is the disintegration of society, mostly based on the disintegration of the family.
Yes.
This whole trans thing, I've been trying, this is how my brain works, is I just try to come up with kind of simplified little phrases to kind of sum it up for myself so I don't sit there and ruminate on it. And what I've kind of come to say to myself, as I'm watching this craziness play out up to the, leading up to the election, is that, they're basically trying to get us to submit to absurdity.
Mm-hmm.
And so to bring it back around, to our main topic, this idea that, it's sad because they've gotten society, let's say a big portion of it, half of it, to this point where we are doubting biological reality. And it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me of 1984 when he holds up his fingers. And he's like, how many fingers am I holding up, Winston? And Winston says 5. And he says, no, I'm holding up 4. And he's like, once they can get us to submit to absurdity and to doubt our own senses, and, well, they've got us. I mean, it's a total control play. And so that's another reason why, I kind of see it in a couple layers, like just in a bigger layer for myself. I just will not submit to the absurdity that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. There's such a thing as biological reality. It's a core component of our reality. But then in a personal level, which, like I will always say, it's surreal. I never in a million years would have expected to be in this position, but this is being kind of thrust upon my son. So, that's why this battle is so important. That's why Jeff's battle is so important. That's why, we can never let this one go, because if they win this one, and just fully win it, well, they've kind of just knocked out the last block of the foundation that's holding up, what we could call a civilization.
No, and I agree. And I've talked about this analogy on my channel because when I first heard about it, it clicked. So I think you've seen the video because I've linked it in a couple of my videos now. It's called Marriage is Like a Sword. So during like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they slowly started to knock God, which is the pommel. And if you know the basics of a sword, you have the pommel, you have the hand, the grip, you have the hand guard, you have the blade, and with that blade, a strong, good balanced blade has that tang, which is inside the handguard and the hilt, go all the way down to where the pommel screws on it, and that's a solid blade. So they slowly got us the pommel, which is a very small piece, but a very important piece nonetheless, and it holds the blade together, especially when it goes to strike. So they've slowly thrown God out of everything. Next, they went in for like the sexual revolution. Feminism came in. And I'm not knocking what the suffrage did, because women were denied basic rights like voting and things like that. So that I'm not knocking on that. But I'm talking about the crap that followed the sexual revolution, which completely destroyed a lot of things. So there goes the grit, because it also had to do with the children. That had to do with, oh, hey, women, you shouldn't be at home raising your kids, leave them to the government, da-da-da. So there goes the handguard and the grip. Next, you have the actual blade, and they've been attacking this for quite a while because, like, we see, like, the drag kid stuff. The trans kid is mostly, they're preying on little boys mostly with this stuff. So you attack the very elements that go into making the blade. And the blade is very important. And so when you attack masculinity at the same time, because you got women trying to redefine masculinity for men, so that kind of destroys the connection that the blade has to that tang with the handguard and the grip, if that makes sense. So they slowly been.
That's a really good analogy.
Well, you know how I got that. So I put out like this long post the other day, and it had to do with my dad and a little bit of my family dynamic. And growing up, the biggest thing I struggled with, and a lot of this had to do with my trauma and how it made me see myself. So the biggest thing I struggled with growing up was like my role as a woman. And at one point, it got to the point where I started to get confused. I wanted to be a guy because I didn't want to be seen as weak. And that's again that comes from struggles of being a sexual abuse victim / rape survivor. Because yeah, fun. So I never heard of this analogy, and I could not understand what me and my dad would have so many heated arguments, and I couldn't understand. So as I'm sitting there working my retail jobs, it was like a week or so before me and my husband got married. I was writing a poem, and 3 lines came to mind, and I literally stopped after I wrote these things, where it's I am the hilt, you are the blade, a match in heaven made. At first, it didn't click until I really thought about it. I'm just like, oh. And then I got like this big script sometime later for all the meaning of the pieces. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, barely. And so now that I think about it, you go through history, it's like, oh my gosh, they've been slowly whacking at this sword for a while, and they've been chopping it up. Now they're going after the blade, the very elements that make the blade. Because if your metal's weak, when it goes to strike, it's going to break. It's going to fail. So, and I'm just like, I was blown away.
I think you're really good at it. I think your husband's a really lucky man, and I think I've said it before. I wish they would have made more like you. And they're, we have some troubled times ahead, and it's gonna.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're gonna. People that don't have someone in their corner backing them up, they're gonna have a really hard time. So, and they know this. I mean, I don't want to get too far up in the weeds, and
right.
Again, but the subject's couched in a bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
This is a takedown of society.
We're
watching it happen right in front of our eyes, and so. We have to protect our kids from it. So I'll tell you, if I had to do it over again,
yeah, I mean,
a lot different. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that we can like go off in so many rails because, like I said, spiritually, I mean, the Bible talked about how the world's going to go to hell. It's going to go under the New World Order. Politically, you can have the same conversation because now you see people pushing for a New World Order. George Soros, I mean, HSC goes hand in hand. Dude, the Bible predicted all this. It didn't tell exactly how it was going to happen, but here we are. So
yeah, no, it's happening in our lifetime. Which is, interesting times to live in. It's always kind of build up to it, and I guess the boomers will kind of check out before it really gets bad, which I think is kind of timed on purpose that way. But yeah, if we live, normal length lives, we're gonna be here to see it. There's gonna be a battle on our hands, and I'll tell you, I don't want my son mutilated when that, it's gonna get hard. It's gonna be pure survival. So that's another thing I don't understand is that all this is happening before our eyes, and my son's mother seems to be just completely obsessed with mutilating our son. So, and I need to continue to be careful with what I'm saying, but I just don't understand it. It's two different worlds, and my son's on the other side of the chasm at the moment, and I'm trying to build a bridge to bring him to my side.
Well, I mean, and I just getting off into the more of the spiritual aspect, Christian, because I said this was in my post, and I said this in my most recent video prior to this one that's going to go up, is that it's a revelation. People will not get it unless they have that revelation with God. And I don't claim to be all knowledgeable. There's a lot of stuff that goes over my head, way over my head, and I'll tell people so. But there's just, I can see the basic basics of what's going on, I'm going like, when are y'all gonna wake up? This is y'all are either gonna die or you guys are gonna get swept up with the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people playing God, and then there's people that know that there is a God, you know. And so I think it starts there, and it starts to go out from there. So yeah, the two sides can't really understand each other, which is unfortunate.
Well, it's not that the two sides can't understand each other. It's one side, if you will, the people who have had that revelation going with God, not being shown everything. I think if we were shown every single thing, we humans would freaking lose our shit. Like, we'd go mentally insane. Oh no, I'm dead serious. There's a reason. Because when I was younger, people would always talk about, oh, well, God reveals everything in time and this and that. And I didn't really quite understand why. And the more that I've grown up and the more crap I've been exposed to, either because of YouTube or just the movements going on, and my brain's thinking, I don't want all the details. That is a whole form of freaking depression and just mental psychosis I don't need in my life. I've left political pages because I'm like, oh, this is causing me to get depressed. I'm out of here.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, you'll hear me say a lot. I just want to go fishing or ride a motorcycle. So
yeah.
I want to get my son back. I want to take him fishing again, and I want to teach him how to ride a motorcycle. And I'm all about the simple life. You know. We can get bogged down with the heavy stuff for sure.
So that is why we get exposed to it at healthy amounts, and that's why guys like, don't go over here unless I tell you to, because no. No. Let's see, we're eking about a little over 40 minutes. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up here?
Well, I mean, I always can't help myself but just to thank people every chance I get who are paying attention to the subject and to my son's situation. I do know that I'm going to have to raise some more money. I'm going to have to figure out how to do that, without, the valid shock value of, the details of this case, what they're doing at CentraCare, for example. But that stuff's already out there enough, that I think that it's done its job. But yeah, there's going to be a few more rounds of this battle, and I've come to realize that attorneys, especially good ones, I think the general public's relationships with attorneys are, when they're hired against you, you hate them, and when they're hired by you to defend you, you love them. So it's like, that depends on the relationship you have with them. But I can tell you that I've started to have a new appreciation of having a good attorney that's in your corner, and that's I've been very blessed to have that. That's all because people have donated to the GoFundMe page for Save Miles. And attorneys put in a lot of work. They have the credentials that no one else can use. They have the terminology. I watched today on Zoom attorneys doing their magic. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I just had a new appreciation for them, and I do think that in a weird way they do earn their money. So I'm going to have to figure out how to raise some more money. But I've got some plans for that. But if anybody hearing this where this cause is the one that they feel like is worthy of donating to, I certainly would appreciate it, and every penny goes towards the legal representation on this case.
Yeah, I will say, just from my stance, and I know there are a lot of broke lawyers out there, but there is in my mind, what makes a good lawyer versus a bad lawyer, like if you want to bring in morals, because I know a lot of people go, well, it doesn't matter if it's moral or not, is it legal? And I freaking hate that argument. I understand it to a point, but just for me personally, it's just like you have, for example, and we'll wrap it up here, Ann's law firm, one of the law firms she's using, Coons Filler. If you have to be that low on the freaking scum tree to pick up a client that is going out of her way to destroy her kid, I don't give a shit what your credentials are. You are a scum lawyer. At that point, you are just money grubbing.
Yeah, no, I thought the exact same thing today. I was like, who in their right mind would ever look at this case and want to represent Sarah's position? I mean, you want to have that, you want to have that on your conscience. You want to have that on your record, in the time of reckoning. It just blows my mind.
Close the
But
door,
that
Mom.
said, my attorney is giving me an incredible deal based on how much work he's putting into it. He's also paying an assistant to do a lot of research and stuff. And so I could not be doing this without having an attorney who is a Christian, who has realized that this is a special case that is not money secondary. You know, of course, people have to get paid and pay their bills at the end of the day, but he's taken this on at a drastically reduced rate. So, yeah, very appreciative of it.
Yeah. Well, if there's really no other details to cover, I think when I wrap it up here, again, congrats. It's a very big milestone, and I'm not one case. I mean, the severity of one case is different from the next, but I mean, this is a build up off of the Save James, because it's gonna hopefully wake up more parents going, hey, we need to get educated. Oh, hey, this is happening to my kid. Come over here. And just connecting more and more people.
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to set a precedent in Minnesota, just like I do believe that Jeff is trying to set a precedent in Texas, and I think his case could possibly, set even a wider precedent than that. But our goal is to be, as far as we know, this is kind of the first case that's making its way through the Minnesota court system like this, and cases like this do tend to be referenced later when similar cases come up. So we're trying to be really careful to lay the groundwork right. That unfortunately, there's going to be more kids that are going to get swept into this, and so
yeah,
it's kind of like what Jeff's saying on his campaign. It's save James and save thousands. That's very literal and very true.
Yes, I know that's very true. But yeah, like I said, thank you for keeping up with me on this, and keeping us updated, because just a lot of people still have their heads in the sand, or are like, this ain't going on, this is all fake. I'm like, no, wake up, this is going on.
Yeah, well, no, I thank you, and you were the first person to pick this up, and you're always the first person I think of when I have something to share. So in the future, I will certainly do that.
All right. Much appreciated. Well, you have yourself a good night, okay?
Okay, I'm going to take my dog for a walk. She's looking at me like we need it, so I probably need it too. So I'll catch you soon.
All right. Talk to you later, Brenton.
Okay, good night.
Bye. Okay, guys, so that is the update. Sorry for some of the background noises. It's a little bit hollow walls and all that. But yeah, as you heard them, they're going to have another hearing here in the next few weeks. And once that we get an official date or whatnot, I'll let you guys know. And if any more updates come in between now and later, I will touch base in regards to Save Miles. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful night, and I'll see you in the next one.